Marc-Andre Fleury's going where?
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Capitals. I am your host, the Insider of the Insiders, Tyler Kuehl. And Elliot Friedman just dropped a bombshell on us. Literally, we were about to record here. By the way, in case you're all curious, it's about 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. However, Elliot Friedman has decided that he's going to come into our show in some way or another. Not literally, unfortunately. We were not able to get Elliot Friedman for this because that would be badass. But no, Elliot Friedman decides to drop news on us. We'll hold off on the news for a second. We will get to it. That'll be the first thing we address because we kind of have to. San Jose Sharks are taking on the Washington Capitals tonight, but almost at this point, it's almost like second to what we're going to talk about here. We're also going to talk about Keith Yandle as well. That's the game I have on in my studio once again. The New York Islanders taking on the Philadelphia Flyers. We'll mention all that later on. Thank you very much for watching and listening to this edition of Locked On Capitals, where we're literally going to talk about something that 15 years ago, nobody would ever think would happen. 10 years ago, nobody would think was going to happen. 5 years ago, nobody would ever think it might actually happen. However, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Elliot Friedman has reported that there is interest for Marc-Andre Fleury from the Washington Capitals. Holy cow. I was not ready for that today. I listen. There are times and things that I read, things that I hear, especially with the last week that has been across the National Hockey League and the hockey landscape for that matter. This was the last thing I was expecting to see. Yeah, okay. For the record, now I'll put this on the side. The exact kind of quote came from Elliot Friedman. Says, we might get used to saying Marc-Andre Fleury, Washington Capital, because the Capitals are looking into it at the very least. Now, remember J.J. Reagan said something along those lines. J.J. Reagan or John Walton, one of the two interviews we did a couple weeks ago, where they'd mentioned going after a goaltender like Marc-Andre Fleury. Now, I kind of gaffed at that because at that point, the Edmonton Oilers were looking into it. And, Vanacek and Samsonov were playing okay, but they weren't playing great. But, how much is a goaltender worth? What kind of a goaltender could you get? And then Elliot Friedman, literally the insider, the reason why I'm the insider of the insiders is because Elliot Friedman is the insider in the game right now. And I literally saw that tweet and I said to myself, oh my gosh, are you kidding me right now? Like, things that I was not ready to talk about. That was it. Like, I was not ready for that to be a headline because, listen, Marc-Andre Fleury is a great goaltender. Marc-Andre Fleury is playing on a bad Chicago Blackhawks team. Marc-Andre Fleury spent years tormenting the Washington Capitals. I'm still under the inclination that, had Marc-Andre Fleury not got picked in the expansion draft, there's a chance that the Caps would have lost that series in 2018, but that's okay. We don't need to go into that. He got picked and then he got beat Matt Murray. There you go. Happy kumbaya, happy. That was something. Now I'm trying to figure out how it's going to work because now all of a sudden we're tasked with trying to figure out what that trade would be. Because obviously, for the Chicago Blackhawks' sake, this is a hockey team that, they kind of need to find a way to make it work. Because the Caps, I have to pull up their cap friendly now because I was not ready to talk about this today. And let me just go to teams. Let me go to Washington Capitals on the bottom of the list here on capfriendly.com. And right now, the LTIR are being used by the Washington Capitals because they're spending almost $85 million, which is 3.5 over the cap. So they're using about that much in LTIR for Anthony Mantha because Anthony Mantha, of course, is out of the lineup right now because of under shoulder surgery. We have not heard anything else other than that. Who else could be on LTIR at this time? But certainly the move would have to be, you'd have to find a guy that would, you have to make a move to free up some cap space, which means you have to move one of your two goaltenders. And unfortunately, only one of them is making over $1 million. That being, of course, Ilya Samsonov. And I know the Chicago Blackhawks are obviously nowhere in a playoff spot, so getting the best goaltender may not be their biggest thing, but they want to get a quality goaltender that they can look towards the future with. Now, of course, Ilya Samsonov and Vitek Vanecek both have arbitration rights on their back burners this coming off season. Now, Marc-Andre Fleury, as of right now, his cap hit for the next 3 seasons, part of his contract that he originally signed with the Vegas Golden Knights, was $7 million, $6.5 base salary for this season. No, $6 million. This is last year of his contract. Sorry, my apologies. So last year of his deal, no signing bonuses, nothing to worry about. But however, it is a modified no trade clause where a player Marc-Andre Fleury submits a 10-team no trade list. And obviously what we've heard from Elliot Friedman, the Washington Capitals are a team that is not on that list. Now, granted, 10 out of 32 is pretty easy for the chance. Literally, you just have to be not Arizona or Montreal or Ottawa or Buffalo. Then again, pretty sure that we're already halfway through the teams that he probably doesn't want to go to. I wonder if the Oilers are one of those teams as well. Yikes. But what could this mean? Because people say, well, Marc-Andre Fleury's not having a great year. Look at the team he's playing on. This guy still has a .917 save percentage right now on the Blackhawks, who are towards the bottom of the Central Division. I believe his record's 500, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yep. As you know, before they play their next game, they're 13-3 is Marc-Andre Fleury. 276 goals against average, yes. But my thing is I was .913 save percentage, I should have said. And that's something I always look at for a goaltender on a bad team, because goals against averages, they're few and far between. Let's put it this way. And yes, I'm going to do another story from Tyler back in the day when he played. When my senior year of high school, I played on a team where the other goaltender and I, Billy Russ, we set the record. We each set the record for the best save percentage in our high school hockey team's history. Both had like a 9-10, 9-11 save percentage, whatever it was. I don't remember what our goals against averages were, but we were about 3.5, 4. Pretty close. Maybe 3.5 to 3, whatever, because we were on a team that was okay, but, we got a lot of shots against us. So that's why I don't look at the goals against average for Marc-Andre Fleury here. But that just shows that even at his age, even the fact that he's bounced around here, this is a guy that has shown that he can still be a top-end goaltender despite his age, despite the fact that, my gosh, he just turned 30, or, oh my gosh, he's not 40 yet. No, 40 is in a couple years. He just turned 37. Just turned 37, and my gosh, he's still one of the best goaltenders in the game, to the point where the Washington Capitals realize, hey, we can get him right now. And it's one of those things where Brian McClellan realizes is that if you're going to get this guy, you're going to pay a penny to get him. You're going to have to give up Samsonov or Vanecek. And I think just given the fact of the salary cap, you're going to have to get rid of Samsonov. You're going to have to get a draft pick involved there as well. And I don't know how much more the Blackhawks are going to want, but there might be someone else, a player maybe involved there. And, depending on the quality of player, maybe the Cap's getting something in return. But that's, like I said, to be foreseen. However, it's not going to be a lot, but you have to make sure that you're actually going for it. That's the real question here in all this, is that you have to say, we are going for it and we have a chance to win the whole kit and caboodle. Because just from the years of watching the Detroit Red Wings do this, you guys remember it. There's a reason why they're bad. Well, they're finally come back around now, but towards Ken Holland's end of his tenure there, how many stupid trades did he make just to keep that streak alive? It was horrible. The dying days of the Joe Louis Arena were just that, the dying days of the Red Wings, going back to the Dead Wings era because of the dumb decisions Ken Holland made. And as we've seen with the Edmonton Oilers, that continues onward. But you got to make sure that this is going to be worth it. You're not just bringing a goaltender in just to try to right the ship and make the playoffs. You got to make sure that Marc-Andre Fleury is going to come into a team that has Stanley Cup aspirations. And, right now, the last few games, the last couple of weeks, I'm not so sold on the Washington Capitals playing well into June and maybe possibly July, given the fact of how the season may go with rescheduled games and what have you. So I'm a little uneasy, maybe a little pessimistic on the move, but certainly if you look at the fact of how good Marc-Andre Fleury is and how the goaltending's been kind of decent, I know there was a 1-0 game the other night against the Vegas Golden Knights. However, you got to respect the fact that Samsonov and Vanacek have not really been up to snuff, and neither of them have a whole lot of playoff experience. And once again, I've talked about this before with John Walton. You sometimes need to get goaltenders in net to give them that experience. Heck, Braden Holtby would never won the Vezina had Tomas Vokoun and Michael Neuwirth not both get injured. And here comes Holtby in from Hershey to save the day. And by golly, give the Capitals some life in those 2012 playoffs. But to that point, I think Marc-Andre Fleury would be a great pickup, but is the price going to be worth it? Because like I said, it's going to be Samsonov. It's going to be, if you want to avoid a player, it's going to have to be a first-round pick. And let me just take a quick look here at the Washington Capitals picks upcoming here. They have their first round coming up here in this year's draft in 2022. Do not have a second, but they do have Winnipeg's second, which they acquired in the trade that got them, or that sent them Brendan Dillon to the Winnipeg Jets. They gave them Winnipeg's next 2 second-round picks, by the way. But I mean, they have their all draft stock and everything, but it's, I mean, how many do you want to give up? I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury is still a good goaltender, and the Hawks are, right now I don't want to know if they're going to make any dumb decisions. I mean, obviously they lost their GM, and Kyle Davidson right now is the interim guy. And, is he going to play greedy, or is he going to show inexperience here? I don't think he's the kind of guy that wants to make big moves right now. I know he's in the discussion to possibly be the next boss in Chicago. I understand he is going to get an interview for the gig. Once the franchise starts looking for it. I think they're wanting to get a president of hockey ops first, but once again, that'll be for maybe a later date here. But the story is the fact that if I'm Kyle Davidson, I'm asking a lot, and Marc-Andre Fleury, it was a big deal that he moved from Vegas to Chicago in the offseason. What makes him think that he wants to move from Chicago to Washington? He has a family. This is one thing when you look at trades, when we get closer to the trade deadline, this can open up another conversation. Players that, there is a reason why they have these no trade clauses or modified no trade clauses, because they realize they have something, to keep in the back of their minds. It's not just them moving, it's their whole family moving. Does Marc-Andre Fleury want to move to DC? Well, given the fact that it's only a 10-team no trade list, that could obviously expand the options here, but he's got to find somewhere he wants to go. And of course, he does have to submit that trade list, which he already did. So it's a tough call if you're a Caps. I would understand why they want to do it, get a good goaltender in here, but you got to make it worth it. Because like I said, it might just be not even half a season of Marc-Andre Fleury. How many times have we seen a trade for a goaltender work well? That's the hard part. Since Ryan Miller was traded, guys, back in 2014 to the St. Louis Blues, no one's really wanted to go after a move like that. No one's wanted to go after a goaltender at the deadline, just how poorly that went for a Blues team that had such aspirations. And arguably you could say that they were possibly good enough to make a deep playoff run, but I guess Brian Elliott and Yaroslav Halak were not the ones to cut the mustard. So they wanted to go with Ryan Miller. And while Ryan Miller was having, he was a good goaltender on a bad Buffalo Sabres team, did not work out. Would it work with the Washington Capitals? I don't know, because Marc-Andre Fleury, for some reason, and this is the last thing we'll go on here before we move on to the San Jose Sharks preview, Marc-Andre Fleury has been a goaltender that has shown that he can be a really, really good goaltender when there's pressure against him, when his team's getting outshot. And we've talked about this in length before. It's rarity that the Capitals get outplayed in a game. And that just seems like when Marc-Andre Fleury is at his best. And I've had this thing with Curtis Joseph for a long time. Curtis Joseph was one of the best goaltenders in the NHL in the 90s and the early 2000s with the Edmonton Oilers and the Toronto Maple Leafs, because of the fact that he faced the most shots, saw the most rubber among any goaltender in the NHL during that span. 2002, 2003, he goes to the Detroit Red Wings, the defending Stanley Cup champions, who just lost Dominik Hasek. That was the only real difference from that team. And they had a chance to go and repeat. They were that good. Curtis Joseph, though, was not the kind of goaltender to face only 20 shots a night. Marc-Andre Fleury is the kind of guy that needs to be involved in the game consistently. And you know what? They haven't really done that. The Caps goaltenders haven't really had to have been the stars of the show too many times this year. So if you're going to go for it, you really have to focus on if the style is going to work with the goaltender you're bringing in. So it'll be an interesting move. We'll see if the Caps go for it. But, it's a risky move. But then again, anytime you trade assets for literally a playoff rental, which is at this point of his contract and what have you, that's what Marc-Andre Fleury wants. And then again, also, you got to also be wondering if Marc-Andre Fleury wants to go to a team that's going to re-sign him for next year. I don't feel like he wants to move 3 times in a year, if not, dare I say the word retire, given his age and the fact that, once again, doesn't feel like bouncing around at the end of his career just because of the fact that, chasing a cup, even though he already has 3. So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled on that. Marc-Andre Fleury, once again, though, as of right now, just a point of interest for the Washington Capitals, nothing in stone. Thank you, Elliot Friedman, for throwing that wrench into our plans. However, guys, it is the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar and maybe even better than a candy bar because it makes it easier to stick to your resolutions because it tastes so good, does Built Bar, you want to eat it. And unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky, waxy, or tasting a chemical spill, Built Bars are also covered in 100% real chocolate. Those are chocolate flavored, of course. Even if you're not a huge fan of working out, you can at least eat something that tastes good and is good for you. That way, when you enjoy a delicious Built Bar, you can almost count it as a workout. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order by using the promo code LOCK15 once again for 15% off at Built.com. So now that we're done with that whole chicade, let's get into the matchup of tonight. The Washington Capitals taking on the San Jose Sharks. Certainly an interesting game. 7 o'clock puck drop, by the way, between them and the San Jose Sharks at Capital One Arena. The Caps want to win this one. I think they want to win every game. But just given the fact that this team has found a way, their one win in their last, they've won 2 of their last 5 games. They've lost their last 5. Lost to Vancouver, lost to the Bruins, and lost to the Golden Knights, of course, this past Monday. Holy cow. Someone wants this week to end already. Holy cow. But your wins are coming up against the Jets, who are a little bit off, and then of course there was the Senators, who are starting off well. Done while I'm recording this against the Buffalo Sabres. It was 3-0 at the end of the first period. But this is going to be an interesting test for them because the Sharks, they're coming off, they're licking their wounds a little bit. They've lost their last 2 games. They've lost 4 of their last 5 as well. And they're coming off a butt kicking at the hands of the Tampa Bay Lightning on home ice as well. And they lost to the Seattle Kraken last Thursday. They did hand one to the LA Kings the Monday prior to that, but losses being shut out by the Rangers, losing a tight one at home to the Penguins. Like, this team is struggling a little bit here, but it's not for lack of trying. Like, that's, I think, another thing too with them is that this is a team that is competitive, is playing well. But they're right now they're right on the cusp. So I'm looking at the divisional standings, and as of right now, it's a tight race. So in the Central, you have Colorado, St. Louis, Nashville as their top 3. Minnesota holding the top wild card spot with 53 points, and then it is an unmitigated fight for the last wild card spot because Vegas has 52 points, and they are trailing the Carolina Hurricanes at the time I'm recording this down in Raleigh. Anaheim has 49. LA in third with 48. Then you have the Calgary Flames, the San Jose Sharks, and the Dallas Stars, all with 44 points. Now, the Dallas Stars are playing right now, and they're up 4-1 on the New Jersey Devils, so that's a fine score that they're going to try to hold on to for the rest of the game. Oilers and Canucks still have to play later on after I'm done recording this, so you'll know about that tomorrow. But the point of the matter is that this is a Sharks team that's playing a little desperate hockey. And unfortunately, they're going to get a little more desperate here as they were dealt a huge blow earlier on Tuesday, as it was announced that Erik Karlsson they made the announcement earlier on Tuesday. However, it happened on Monday. Erik Karlsson underwent successful surgery on his left forearm at the Kaiser Permanente on Monday, expected to be reevaluated in mid-March. That is a huge blow to the Sharks because Karlsson, I've harped on him since he, replaced his ankle and then signed $11.5 million with the San Jose Sharks. Yikes. Because he's a guy with only one foot, one real foot. Now he is a guy that only has one real arm. And it was muscles to his forearm, by the way, not a chipped bone. So, but once again, this is going to be a problem for them because now there is a hole on defense. And, the Sharks have been missing a little bit of that. Yes, they have a guy like Brent Burns. They have guys. They have Marc-Edouard Vlasic is still there, but this is a relatively younger, dare I say, inexperienced decor. They have, Mario Ferraro, who's been playing okay. They've had, Jacob Mignogna, who has had to play a little bit. Radim Simek has to play as well. And, Ferraro's 11 points so far for him. Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns, of course, have been the top two defensemen. The two of them combined have 51 points, or 53 points, excuse me, between Karlsson and Burns alone. The next closest defenseman, of course, like I said, was Ferraro. Jacob Middleton, who is not currently in the lineup right now, has 8 points in 28 games. And then you have to go further down to Marc-Andre Fleury, only 7 points, and he's a minus 11 going for the green jacket for the Sharks this year. It's not easy for them to miss a guy like Erik Karlsson, because he was not just an offensive catalyst, but a guy who was good in his own zone as well. So that's going to be a tough blow. And, I don't want to go into the whole must-win scenario for the Caps here, but this is a game where they should, similar to what we saw, how they should dominate the Ottawa Senators last Saturday, they should beat the San Jose Sharks. Now, granted, they've had a pretty good goaltending situation they've had there, despite the fact, because dare I say, I saw someone tweet this at me. Someone tweeted a picture of James Reimer and said, this is the guy the Capitals should go after. James Reimer, by the way, former Toronto Maple Leaf, former Carolina Hurricane, former Florida Panther, and former, now San Jose Shark goaltender. He, it's very interesting to ponder the idea. He is an older goaltender. He is 33 years old. He is 12-8-1, though, with a 914 save percentage and a 283 goals against average. He has been the majority starter, which is, for me, having watched him grow up through the Toronto Marlies system and become a Toronto Maple Leafs number one starter for at least a couple seasons, it was kind of cool to see him get back a number one job for a team, because I've always thought he's a very underrated goaltender. And of course, he has beautiful kids, and his wife had to deal with so much during 2013. So I don't even get into that story, but it'd be interesting to bring him on board. And I think that would be, dare I say, a cheaper maneuver for the Washington Capitals to bring in a guy like him. We don't know who is starting yet, but I would not be shocked if it were to be James Reimer. Both goaltenders think had to play against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, fresh, clean slate for the Sharks. They're trying to put that game behind them, and they know they have to, because the Capitals are a really good team, and they know they can't let up. And I think the Capitals have to realize that the Sharks are going to try to come out humming. They're going to try to put that game behind them, because while the Penguins the Capitals have some space between them and the other teams trying to get back up into the wild card conversation. Well, right now the Sharks are battling for their playoff lives. So I wouldn't expect them to say, let's come out, let's play hard, let's try to put that game behind us and try to forget it ever happened. So the Caps are going to have to be wary of the Sharks quick right out of the gate. They're going to have to thwart any attack. It sounds like Vanacek might be getting the start again for the Capitals. He's going to have to play good as well, because, while there are defensemen that are playing well, I think Timo Meier and Tomas Hertl, by the way, who's in a contract year, both those guys have been absolutely tearing it up for the Sharks this year. 46 points for Timo Meier. Of course, he scored 5 goals last week in one game, so maybe the number's a little inflated for the 25-year-old, but Logan Couture is having a great time. Alex Barabanov is putting up big numbers. This team has offensive weapons that, if the Caps give up chances, kind of similar to what we saw in the first period against Vegas, and, a little bit what we saw, of course, against Boston, Vanacek's going to have to come up big, and I think the Capitals defense is going to have to really worry about that. Obviously, they were dealt a huge blow because Nick Jensen, of course, week to week, as we talked about yesterday, with an upper body injury, undisclosed, of course, could be a shoulder, could be chest, who knows, ribs, who knows with what Jensen is, but that opens up room for guys like Michael Kempney to play a little bit more here. No one's been called up from the Hershey Bears as of late, or at least as of the time of this recording. That could easily change by then. But there are certainly question marks with the Washington Capitals defense. And as we talked about at the top of the show, possibly goaltending. So it's going to be a tough one. Once again, 7 o'clock puck drop at Capital One Arena tonight. On Wednesday night between the Sharks and the Caps. Before we get to Keith Yandle talking about the amazing accomplishment that he had, BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond, as BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the sports wagering action for 2022. New year and a new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, do not wait. Take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, looking at the quick scores that are on games that are on tap for Wednesday night. No games finished up that Tuesday by the time of this recording, so I do apologize. However, some big ones on Wednesday. Mentioned Sharks and Caps. Also, Maple Leafs and the Ducks. Huge game there in Toronto. The Ducks trying to keep up with the Vegas Golden Knights at the top of the Pacific, while the Leafs just trying to keep up with the juggernaut that is the two Florida teams in the Atlantic Division. The Calgary Flames, they're obviously, we talked about them. They're in the heat of it with the San Jose Sharks and the Minnesota Wild. They are taking on the Columbus Blue Jackets, 7 o'clock. The Red Wings hosting the Chicago Blackhawks. That's the first of two TNT games on Wednesday. The Colorado Avalanche and the Boston Bruins in a big match out in Denver. That'll be a big one, 10 o'clock, that puck drop. However, guys, we got to wrap this one up by giving props to a defenseman for the Philadelphia Flyers. We mentioned it yesterday. He tied the record tonight against the New York Islanders, starting on left defense, Keith Yandle for the Philly Flyers, getting the start and game 965 in a row for the veteran defenseman, a stretch that started back when Wayne Gretzky last scratched Keith Yandle back in 2009. An incredible mark, passing Doug Jarvis. And, this is now game 1075 for Keith Yandle as well. Congratulations to the defenseman. I mean, Florida, Anaheim, Arizona, and now Philadelphia. Obviously, those teams are not in that order, but you get my drift. Congratulations to him, because that right there is a mark of a guy that has played good enough. Like, don't forget, this guy's an all-star. He was an all-star. And, certainly a guy that fit the mold pretty well with the Panthers enough to get some offense going, because it wasn't like he was a bad defenseman over there either. Because if you play over 900, if you play more than like 100 games in a row, you got to first stay healthy. 2, you got to be good enough to be in the lineup every single day. Like, how many times we talked about a Capitals player that was just held out of the lineup? Like a guy like Connor McMichael, like a good, talented player, just couldn't find a spot on the team. And unfortunately, he played 12 games in a row at one point. Right? Like, even Ovechkin's missed time. Of course, Kuznetsov and them have missed times. And even during the pandemic, somehow, some way, Keith Yandle was able to stay healthy that entire time. Like, I'm not saying that's more impressive than Doug Jarvis's record, because Doug Jarvis played back in the 80s when it was, hockey, it was HE double hockey sticks. Like, it was death by sticks. That was crazy. How physical the game, how chippy and how dirty the game used to be played back in the day. So, certainly, you got to give that guy props for how he was able to go through all that. But still, Keith Yandle in a pandemic where literally players that you didn't think would ever, and same thing for Phil Kessel, who's playing, I think, 941, 942 tonight for the Arizona Coyotes. That started back in 2009, 2010 as well with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, it's another crazy record that you don't know if it's ever going to get topped. I was talking with Mike DiStefano on the Tuesday edition of Locked On NHL, and I talked about, should he go for 1,000 now? The crazy record the crazy thing about Doug Jarvis's record. So Doug Jarvis played for the Montreal Canadiens, won Stanley Cups there, and was on that team, and a great team that he was part of, but ended up finishing his career at the Hartford Whalers. So the 87-88 season, he was 33 years old. He was scratched like 2 games into the year. And it was the 3rd game of the year he was scratched, and he never played in the NHL ever again. Got sent down to the minors, never touched the NHL ice ever again. He literally played 964 games, all of them consecutively. Obviously, Keith Yandle doesn't have that, but that right there was the funniest trivia question. Like, how many games did Doug Jarvis actually play? The answer, 964. So, a little trivia for you folks there for, the talk about the Carolina Hurricanes. I flipped over to that game. They're up 2-1 on the Vegas Golden Knights right now. Former Hartford, formerly known as the Hartford Whalers. They, many years ago, back in 88, pre-Pierre Maguire, in case any of you guys are curious. Then again, Pierre coached for 3 months because he was a bad coach. Anywho, but so a little bit of tidbit there for you. So once again, congratulations to Keith Yandle, 965 consecutive games. And you know what? It's not one of those things where you just beat it by 1 and call it good, because let's be honest, Phil Kessel ain't stopping. Phil Kessel's going to play out the entire year. He'd probably pass that record if Yandle sat. So I believe he would come a few games short. If he plays out the rest of the year, he'd be a couple games short of it, because I just put the NHL standings away. Let me see if I can pull them back up here for you. The Philadelphia Flyers, this is their Where is it? There they are. At the bottom of the standings. This is game 43 for them. So he would 965. Actually, I think if he played the rest of the year, he'd hit 1,000. He hit playing 1,000 games in the NHL is tough enough. 1,000 straight though. Knock on wood. Let's hope Keith Yandle is able to pull it off because that'd be an incredible mark on a very solid and very respectable, dare I say, near Hall of Fame career. That is it for this edition of Locked On Capitals, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about the San Jose Sharks Washington Capitals game and any other wonky news that comes out right before we start recording. We'll just have to wait and see. Be sure to follow us at Locked On Caps, everyone, at TJKU29 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Put up a fun little thing the other day about broadcasters and freelancers, and I thought it was kind of funny. A few of my broadcasting colleagues liked it, so it had to have been somewhat decent. We're back tomorrow once again, folks. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you tomorrow here on Locked On Caps.